Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so very much for dropping by this video. I am very excited to share a few thoughts today about the spiritual path, specifically as shared by Bruno Groening. If you'd like to know more about him, please click on the link that's in the chat box or below this video. So, at the center of Bruno Groening's teaching is the idea of trusting in God. But what does that mean? How to do it? So, when I was first introduced to these teachings, I thought what that meant was to trust that God could heal anything, that nothing was impossible for God, that nothing is incurable, which are quotes of Bruno Groening's. And certainly that's part of trust, trusting in the limitlessness of God's power. And it really was a revolutionary idea for me. First of all, that there even was a higher power, but that it could and would directly intervene in my life was profound and life-changing, really. But then there came more layers and nuances. And one of those nuances was to trust that everything that occurs ultimately is for the good. Or as Bruno Groening said, there's a German proverb which he once quoted, "Whoever trusts in God's right hand has not built on sinking sand." He continued, "The state of the world is steered by God. Only things that serve as a lesson are allowed to happen." So that, in my understanding, means that everything that happens serves our spiritual growth. That was a cool idea, but to live that, not so easy, especially when painful things happen, challenging things happen. Not so easy also looking around at the state of the world to really trust that the state of the world is steered by God. So that took me many years, and I still struggle with it sometimes, to really trust that everything that happens, that the hand of God is there. In essence, you could say that there are no mistakes. And another part of trust that I still grapple with sometimes is maintaining trust when a healing doesn't occur in the time in which I want it to occur. And I know that there's many people out there who struggle with that. And I'm with you. I feel you. It can be hard. It can be hard to maintain. It's very easy to maintain trust and faith. This is going to heal. This is going to heal. It's very easy to maintain that for an hour or a day or a week or a month or a couple of months. But how about a year or multiple years? That's where it can get really challenging. And as I've talked about many times on this channel, that Bruno is very explicit that when a healing doesn't occur, there is a good spiritual reason, because there's a certain growth or learning that needs to happen first. So all of this, this idea of trust is very deeply connected with the idea of surrender, of really surrendering to God, to ultimately saying, "You're infinitely wiser than me. You know what's best. Thy will, not mine, be done. Here's what I want, and you're infinitely wise. I'm not. You know what's best for me. I don't. I know what I want. I'm an expert at what I want, but I'm not an expert in knowing what's best." And therein comes surrender, which is not easy when painful things are happening, when something isn't healing as quickly as we'd like. And yet, that's where the rubber meets the road when it comes to learning how to have faith and trust. So I was reading a spiritual book today. It's great. It's called Courage to Change. And the person was sharing about their process of learning to surrender with God and how that's deeply related to trust. They said, it took me a long time. It took me a long time to surrender. And they said, the best way I've found is to invite the best way I've found to invite serenity is to recognize that the world is in good hands. Now, again, this can seem counterintuitive. It can bring up all sorts of reactions like, well, but about this, or but shouldn't I do this, and this shouldn't have happened, and I know those reactions well because I've been sitting with this teaching, gosh, for a good 8 or 9 years, if not 10 years, and wrestling with it and arguing with God about it. What I've come to is the recognition that in every situation, and specifically with every challenge I face, one of two things is going to happen. There's going to be an amazing, miraculous turnaround, which I love. A healing, a help, an intervention, something great is going to happen with that challenge. Or there's something to be learned or something to be let go of. It may be painful for a little bit. It may be painful for a long bit. But in the end, I'm going to let go of something bad or I'm going to learn something good. And that's wonderful. So, in essence, that means that only wonderful things can happen. Now, this is not to deny that painful things can happen, and this is not to deny the power of evil and the need for discernment. And it takes on or invites in this way of looking at the world that even with the most painful thing, even with the most evil thing that happens to us or around us, that the hand of God is there, and ultimately it will serve our spiritual growth, much less the spiritual growth of everyone involved. Bruno talked about this, that God gives free will and allows us to do all sorts of horrific things. My understanding of this is that it isn't God's first choice or preference that we do evil. I'm not saying anything like that, but God allows you and me and we to do all sorts of horrible things and to really create a lot of misery for ourselves and each other and even for this beautiful divine planet for the sake of learning, for the sake of allowing us to be children with free will and to learn the difference between good and evil. And sometimes that learning is very painful. So let's see if there's anything else I'd like to add. Now, I'd just like to point out that it's very easy for me to sit here and say this because right now nothing bad is happening. In fact, I'm enjoying making this video. So right here, right now, life feels great. The challenge for me, for you, for all of us, is to continue to live this faith and trust when things are not going well. And in my experience, that takes practice. It's not easy. But at a certain point, there comes the need to stand by the truth and to say, no matter what happens, this is true. And that's a very interesting definition of truth, is no matter what, this is true. And I'm sharing my understanding of Bruno's teachings, and the truth that I am committing to stand by is that no matter how painful, how bad something is, or how much negativity happens to me, I am committing to hold the view. And when I fall off, which I will, because I'm a learner, I'm a human, to come back to this is part of the divine plan. In the long run, this will serve me. God, I really don't like this. Please help me out of this. Help me resolve this as quickly as possible. And you're the boss. You know what's best for me. And that's what trust really means to me, in accord with Bruno Groening's teachings. And that's what surrender really means to me. And that's what it means to surrender to God and to really trust in God. And that doesn't preclude being authentic. You know, it's written in the Bible that the night before he was arrested, Jesus asked God, Jesus knew what was coming. In fact, Bruno said that Jesus knew what would happen if he came, but he still came. And so he knew that, and he came down to the earth. And the night before it happened, it's written that Jesus said, please take this cup from me, meaning, please, I don't want to go through the crucifixion. So it doesn't mean that we just shut off our feelings and just become robots. Okay, God, your will, not mine, be done. So the first part is Jesus asked for what he wanted. The second part, it's written that he said, and thy will, not mine, be done. God, this is what I want, but you're in charge. I surrender to you. It's very easy to believe it for a second or a minute, but to live by it. I want to be very clear that what I'm talking about and what Bruno called us to, because Bruno spoke of maintaining the divine heavenly peace under all circumstances. How do we do that? I believe what I'm talking about tonight is a key part of that, to maintain faith and trust in God, no matter what's going on. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this. I consider it at the core of Bruno's teaching. And one of the key components for how to have serenity. And really connected to this is the understanding that when negative things happen, we've played a part in bringing it on to ourselves. I was just reading the other day a quote of Bruno's. He said, I'm always telling people you have to sleep in the bed you make. He also said, you reap what you sow. And the other quote, which is a little fuzzy, but something along the lines of, human beings bring misfortune on themselves. And this takes us out of the role of victim, that we did something in the past, we planted a seed that we're now reaping, and is for our growth, not a punishment, but for our growth and learning. Really appreciate everyone's time, energy, and attention. I wish all of us good practice in practicing this very difficult, yet, in my view, very important principle and teaching of Bruno. Thank you so very much. Big love.